But thank you for joining me on today's Diversity Chat, where we bridge the gaps of diversity and destroy ignorance before it destroys another life. And I would like to welcome you and ask you to introduce yourself. So what's your name?
My name is Shannon McNeil.
Shannon.
Yes, Shannon McNeil. First and foremost, I am a believer. I love God. I'm a child of God. So everything I do is just to try to spread Christ's love, hopefully, in all things that I do. For the past 5 years, I've been an event planner for corporate events and sales. I just became a part of cultivateusnow.org. My boyfriend, Summer Love, he's one of the co-founders. So that's a new journey that I'm excited to be a part of. Just about cultivating Black lives, refocusing our time, energy, funds towards Black organizations, businesses, just education, spending time with your family, etc. Besides that, the past I've dabbled in production and casting, and I always will have a passion for childcare, education, the youth. It's pretty much me in a bubble. And a laughter enthusiast.
What is the last thing you said?
Laughter enthusiast. That's
okay.
One of my favorite things to do is laugh. So
awesome.
I wouldn't be me without that part.
Awesome. I love that title. And then where are you from, and where do you live right now? That's different.
I was born in Northridge, California, the Valley 818, and I still reside in the Valley, San Fernando Valley. So that is where I live, but I frequent Pasadena, frequent LA.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, when you're in LA, the whole county is like one city. So
right.
2.5 hours. I'm just going to go 2.5 hours that way and still be in LA, quote unquote.
And the people who don't live out here, I just say LA because they're not where the Valley is.
Exactly. And what ethnic group do you identify as?
Black.
And then what's your age, if you're okay sharing?
I am 32.
32.
I feel like I'm doing this late. Like I'm acting. Hi, my name's Shannon McNeil. I'm 32 years old. And yeah, I'm ready and excited to converse.
Awesome sauce. So we're going to be talking about empathy and ignorance, and the difference between willful ignorance and just ignorance. I know that's something that's on your heart. Oh no, who said that? Someone said something funny. She's in the chat.
She's a friend. She's speaking from love.
I know that you mentioned the Cultivate. Would you call it an organization, a movement, a startup? Like, what is it?
Almost all of the above. It's definitely an organization that's starting as a movement. And I feel like once the movement continues to get rolling is when we'll be able to get more momentum and see more change and growth. But it's definitely an organization, a movement of the heart, starting with the heart in mind. Yeah.
Like, what's some of the things y'all are doing, like, specifically?
Well, currently, on July 4th, we started the movement, which was making a stand to cancel all major streaming platforms for TV and film. And so, like, some examples would be like Hulu, Netflix, things like that. And choosing to refocus your time that you would be spending watching TV, potentially, your dollars that you would be spending, and just your energy on other things that are basically cultivating Black lives. So whether that's a Black streaming device, a streaming service, if that is investing the $10 that you are not investing that month into a Black grassroots organization. The website has lists of alternative streaming services. It has lists of different organizations. If there's another Black-owned or Black-inspired organization that you have that's not on the list, always send us something if you're watching this, or invest that money that way, investing into knowledge, reading, buying books. I mean, there's a lot of people who read, but there's just so much that we can educate ourselves on, especially in today's climate. I feel like there's so many conversations that need to be had, but they need to be had from educated people, not just like spewing knowledge that could be false or misguided. So on July 4th, we started. It's for 3 months and 81 days, which sounds like 3 months, but it's really about 6 months. But it's a tribute and paying homage to the Montgomery bus boycott, which was 381 days. So, yes, we do understand that it can be rough, especially in quarantine. You kind of just want to zone out and binge watch things, but it's really, in the grand scheme of things, a small sacrifice to potentially see a big change. There's power in our dollar, there's power in our attention, and instead of us trying to convince, which is a big part of my heart behind the ignorance and the empathy aspect, is there's such a big part of me that in the beginning spent so much time trying to convince everyone and just spewing out things that I wanted you to feel from my heart and my experience. But that could not be a good representation and a place to put my time. Like, instead, I should be trying to cultivate my mind, cultivate my family, my friends, the people around me, their minds, instead of trying to convince someone or an invisible person, my viewers or my friends on social media. Just spend it cultivating. So that's it.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like the heart behind it definitely is be intentional and be present.
Right.
So that you can be effective. I have seen people share, their story or their point of view without emotion, and I think it can be really hard when it's firsthand experience or if you're empathizing with someone. Do you feel like you have like a strategy on how to kind of communicate? Because I'm sure it's still important for you to share your voice, and that's why I wanted you on this chat. I guess the question is, how does one share, like in an informed way, like while we're doing Cultivate and we're getting informed, how do we share from that space of, I guess, maybe intellectual, like just like facts without emotion? Is it possible?
I think that if you're talking about anything that you have a personal experience with and it's not mainly textbook knowledge, then the emotions will be there. I think people's personalities allow them to control their emotions and how they communicate differently. So that kind of lies in the person. If you're fine with, if the person that you're talking with, you have a rapport with them and you know that they can handle your passion or your emotion, then I think it's safe to say, you can talk freely if you're an emotional communicator. But if that's not appropriate for the audience or who you're talking to, then I think that you need to read a book basically on how to communicate and kind of control your emotions. I'm a pretty emotional communicator. I fluctuate. I used to do speech contests when I was little, so my range of loudness goes up and down, tone goes up and down, and I've realized that works for some people and it doesn't work for some people. So if we're talking about like hard issues in communicating, I think having your emotions in control can be the death or the growth of the conversation. You can completely lose somebody, or you will have a successful interaction. Yeah.
It just depends on who's involved, how they hear, how you deliver your message.
And that's my biased opinion, because I'm okay with the emotional conversation. Someone may say that that's just not appropriate at all, and to be effective, you shouldn't use it, but I'm okay with it.
I would definitely agree that it works on both ends. Just depends on, I guess, who you're talking to or What filters, filters are a big thing. Depends on how people hear, and if they're hurt or defensiveness is already like, you already could be at a deficit just because they're already feeling a certain kind of way. So
right, you could have had a bad day, didn't have your coffee that morning, and sets off the whole thing.
Yeah. And before we get into like ignorance and stuff, because I guess it's related. I've seen videos of people, that, well, they're always black. They've been just mind their business, right? And then a cop maybe pulls them over or something like, or says like, why are you doing that? Or why are you sitting there or whatever? And the person they don't have, like you said, it depends on how your day's going. They might be in just an emotional situation where their state where they're just not capable of tolerating, they're like tapped out to tolerate, and things have like escalated even more so. And it's not blaming anybody, not blaming them, but when we talk about like emotions and how they affect communication, I was curious if you've seen any of those videos and what your thoughts are. Sometimes somebody's like, why are you doing that? Like, I don't want to tell you. It's not your business. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes I wonder, like, did that make it worse, or is it laying down and just taking it to give the information? Like, you owe them when you don't. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I straddle the line. Like, that's where the empathy comes into play. I feel like it can be climate based. So currently I see a lot of the videos as well. And the unfortunate part is that a lot of things are being recorded now and people are posting it for the sake of its awareness. People are intrigued by it now and they want to know. The thing is, before we were posting it on social media, it was happening. It's been happening. So whether these different people have been experiencing those same instances themselves, or if their mom has shared enough stories, or their best friend, or a loved one, someone who they know, they're hearing that this happens often. So when it happens in that moment and we're in this climate, you're quick to record it, or you can be quick to have that defensive response, because in reality, if you're being approached or accused unjustly or for no reason, and you know that this can turn quickly into something that my life could be on the line or anything, it's just a heightened sense of defense. Do I think that it escalates the situation? I think that it can, but I think that what is happening is it's a cry for empathy. So in the moment, it's like I'm sitting, or I saw a video where these two gentlemen, they were fishing in a lake and they lived in the community, and someone came up and said that they weren't supposed to be there, that they were taking the fish, and I guess it's a throwback fish pond where you're not supposed to take the fish. And they were accusing them of not even living there, and they did, and they were used to being in the area, all this stuff. The lady calls the police, and they're like, okay, like, you've called the police, you can stop harassing us, let the police come. Like, even though they were inconvenienced because they weren't doing anything wrong, they were okay with waiting for the police to finish the rest. But for her to continue to nag, even other onlookers were coming like, then let the police do their job now that you've done what you felt was necessary, Yeah. So in that moment, he could have gone crazy and been like, rah, and then at the end of the day, when we look on paper, if he was valid, was he wrong to get upset and go crazy if he had chose to do that? I wouldn't say that he's wrong, but I think at the end of the day, you should always act in love. So that's the difference. It's just hard to act in love when you're being accused of something that you don't feel is just.
Yeah, which makes me, I like those examples. It makes me wonder how, from a biblical standpoint, how we can be as wise as serpents and gentle as doves in those situations.
Say that one more time.
Like, the scripture talks about being wise as serpents and gentle as doves. How we can apply that to these situations of obvious injustice, but I just want to make it out alive or without going to jail or something. You know what I mean? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
I think the climate has changed my thoughts on it, because I've had conversations with my parents where it's that same, like the advice, you have to sit your kids down and tell them this is how you need to behave, even though the next person may not have to ever sit down and tell their kid that they need to behave in this manner in order to get out alive of a normal traffic stop or an encounter with another person. You know, that's not everyone's thought process. That's not a lesson that every parent has on their list of to do once they have a child. So I think that there's parts of me that feel like different generations, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong, just my opinion. I feel like some generations, they had it so hard and they got so used to what they had to do to get through the different changes, from being called the N-word to being a Negro to being colored to being Black. And like, if you live throughout all that timeline, once you get to a specific age, you're like, you were used to the fluidity of it. You were used to the transition of this is just a new way. You need to morph and form and get with it. I think we've reached this generation that's a little disconnected. I don't think my age range, but some of the younger generation, they're more disconnected from that concept, to where they're just like, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. I don't think I should even have to bother myself with understanding I shouldn't have to do that to get out alive. So I feel like I straddle the line where I completely understand it. Like, it's much better for me to be alive at the end of this than to have asked the wrong question. I just think that it's completely unfair that I can't ask a question that's illegal. Like, I'm legally have the right to do that. That blows my mind, to where now I don't know what I would do in the situation until I'm in it. I don't know. I think it would depend on the day if I really felt like just shutting up and getting through it, or if I felt like speaking respectfully in my legal right to speak.
Just hearing you say that, like, just thinking of the unfortunate potholes and all that, you know, when you're within your rights, but someone still violates it, you know, it's really unfortunate. I want to give some definition. So the definition of ignorance is a lack of knowledge or information, and empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. So I know you wanted to talk about the difference between willful ignorance and just ignorance, just plain ignorance. Can you speak on that a little bit more? I know you spoke on empathy.
Yeah. I think that I'm empathetic to people who are ignorant to a certain extent, just because I feel like I've been around a lot of different people. And the more that I read, especially recently, from different people, strangers who express like how they ended up in the bubble to where they did not know about things that were going on, it makes some of the things make more sense. It doesn't all seem so like evil to me. But I think, like I said, ignorance or willful ignorance, but it's like there's lines between innocence, ignorance, and then arrogance. So it's like there's an aspect of being ignorant that can almost be an innocent ignorant, because you truly did not have the opportunity to be knowledgeable of something. Or, well, let me say this first. Everybody has the opportunity to be knowledgeable of everything. We have everything at our fingertips. So whether it's an interest of ours, I could want to learn how to make a coral reef like lampstands. If I really wanted to do that, I could Google it and figure it out and be knowledgeable of it. I'm currently ignorant. I don't know how to make a coral reef lamp. So if you're a human and you care about humans and you have time, like you don't spend all your time watching TV and you pick up a book, you can learn about every culture, anything if you want to. So we all have that right. But if you're living your normal, we understand life, and you grew up wherever you grew up and you're a product of your environment and things like that, there can be a level of innocent ignorance to me. Then there's ignorance where you are ignorant, but you become aware that you're ignorant and you choose to remain ignorant. So at that point, that's where I'm like, you met enough people to have some interest in getting to know more about people and their experiences, or you care enough to talk to people and actually listen to understand and not just talk to share, you know? And then there's arrogance, which is like the blatant acceptance that I'm ignorant and I still believe in what I'm saying, or I know that I'm ignorant. I know I'm not knowledgeable, but I'm going to continue to have this belief and act on it, you know? So I found myself in the past few months, especially on social media, feeling a heavy sense of empathy and desire to share the trauma, to share reasons why, because it's as if I'm able to speak for the first time. It's not that any of this is new. It's that, oh, you're listening right now. Whether you're listening to understand or not, you're listening. So I'm just going to keep spewing information and experiences, hoping that you can connect it to your experiences and your loved ones if you can't relate to me. And then it'll be an epiphany. But I was like obsessing over having an aha moment for the world or anyone who cared to tap through my story or my page. So that's where I feel like I'm empathetic, because I didn't want to give up the hope that something I would share would change someone's perspective enough to have them desire to learn more, or to desire to think before they speak, or think before they judge, or think about what all is happening instead of just from their perspective. And I think that goes both ways. It goes with myself. There's still a lot that I'm ignorant to that I have to learn, even about my own race and culture. You know, like, it's not a specific thing like that, but I just think that it can be an attacking thing. Conversations can feel attacking. I want to talk. I want to tell you all about my feelings, but I also care about how that affects you, and if you are able to connect the dots on how you were disconnected from my reality, pretty much.
What do you think is like something you were trying to communicate that you felt like wasn't being communicated at the level which you feel like people would have that aha moment? Not that you can make anybody receive your information one way or the other, but what is one thing that you were, posting about or talking about, closer to like June 1st, that was really stirring your heart, and how are you communicating that these days?
That's hard. I don't know if my communication method has changed as much. Like, in the beginning, I feel like it was more so like visual evidence was enough. So I was reposting videos or things like that, where it's like, if you see it, it's hard to fight with a visual evidence of something happening that's not cool. And then that would make me feel like you would understand something more, or feel like you should fight for something. And then I kind of morphed to like words, like articles and posts, to like not be as abrupt, but more like educating. Like, I'm learning, you're learning, this is all just for information. And now I feel like it's kind of like the mindset of cultivate. Like, it's not so much that I need to teach everyone. I think it's a lifestyle. It's not just social media. I don't need to spend 15 hours a day scrolling and posting and not talking to my parents about it, not talking to my neighbor about it, not starting small groups, book studies, book clubs, and just making myself more knowledgeable so that I actually don't have to spew articles, but I can have conversations. I can be the article, because I've done enough research and study myself, plus my experience, to get across to someone. And I just think the balance between anger and love had to balance out too, because that's been a battle the whole time for me, is being upset over things and feeling wronged versus understanding that what needs to happen is people need to love more and people need to care more about their neighbor.
Mm.
Moving forward, like, I don't want to beat you up so much for everything in the past, but yeah, we need to do better at loving each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. It's like what's necessary and what's needed is an understanding of history so we don't repeat it, but it's not staying in history, but, you know, realizing what's the foundation of why we're standing where we're standing, how we're standing here, and then building that relationship. I love that. That's part of where you're putting your energy towards, and I think that's a great example. So thank you for sharing that. You know, to be able to. So it makes me think of this thought of like doing the good thing versus the God thing. You know, like, oh, I did a good thing. I gave, you know, food to the homeless guy on the corner. Well, the guy experiencing homelessness on the corner. But God, I mean, that was good. But God told you to go next door and talk to your neighbor. So it's like that more, what's more important, you know, what's more in line with what God actually knows will work. Because, I mean, that was personally, that was a little bit of my concern with the reaction of, like, the church, was I felt like people, like, and no one specific, just, like, too many people, you know, like, took off their faith and was, like, more black than Christian, you know? And that's a hard, you know, reality, I guess. I look at it like when you're squeezed like a sponge, you see what comes out. It's hard because you're human, so you're experiencing life, and you've been dealing with a thing, like you've been on a crutch the whole time, and you want to walk the right path with God, but you're human. I don't know if that stirs any thoughts for you, but that battle of, I want to speak from the human side, I have an emotion, but at the same time, I have a position in the kingdom that I'm supposed to be a representative of Christ. Like you said, you know, your neighbor, you love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, you didn't say that part, but that's Bible.
Yeah, that's Bible. Yeah, it's definitely a balance. Like I was saying, my anger versus love balance. I had a moment where I realized I was just kind of like, I'm a spirit, like I have a soul, and my goal is to be as Christ-like as possible, for the Holy Spirit to fill me to the brim to where all that spews out is Christ-like, right? I was born in this flesh. That was also God's will for my life, you know, like I didn't have control over this. I was born in this body. So it has a purpose. Of course, I have a connection to my race, my culture, everything about being black. But that's still my flesh, you know? So while I don't believe that we should separate the care, because it's about everyone, we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. We all deserve love and to be treated justly. So I don't think that it should be removed from the church's thought, you know, like that we shouldn't be talking about racial issues or social injustices at all. I think it should be high on the list, because I think Christ would have done the same thing if he was still walking on this earth today. But what I don't think is that me fighting for social injustices should ever take me out of the character and the fruit of the Spirit that Christ guides me and advises me to do. So if I'm beginning to get pulled further and further from my walk and my relationship with Christ, as I'm trying to grow further and further in my fight for social justice, then I'm not doing the right thing. I need to recenter myself and recenter my mind and my approach. So for the church, I think that to take a back seat is a disservice, for sure, to God's calling for all of us. But I think that you should never, it just shouldn't change your character in the fight for the justice. But
I like it.
I do think that, being silent is not the answer. And then there's a privilege in having to educate yourself and not experiencing things. So as a church as a whole, we are one body. We're one. So there's so many aspects of our body that haven't experienced the other things that aspects of the body have, the same way our physical body is. Like my fingers, they don't know what my toes feel like to walk on hot asphalt while I'm running around the pool. You know, I've never done a handstand outside by the pool. But so it's understandable for there to be a lack of understanding, but you should never be comfortable in your lack of understanding as the body of Christ, because we all need each other to work. So if one is failing, my foot is failing, there's people who lose their feet, they have to walk with their hands. That's molding. That you would think that that's not what it was intended for, but because God made us all, no matter what the circumstance is, if you need to stand up for the person who's down or being broken or hurt, then that is your responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Good. You said a lot of good content there that I can't even recap quite, but but that's what God's recorded. So I would just I kind of got stuck a little bit too when you're like, if Jesus was still walking here on the earth like he was back in the days, 2,000 some years ago, would he, he would address the issue. And I'm just like shook at the thought of like, dang, like, I want to say the judgment against the church or maybe the way it's handling it, but I don't know. That just got me.
Heavy. But it goes beyond this issue. It's day-to-day everything, Yeah. Jesus handled himself a specific way, and he left the blueprint in the Word. So it's easy for us to focus on what's at the front right now, but it takes, honestly, I think a lot of believers, a lot of Christians need to take a moment and just reevaluate where they stand. Like, how much of the Word are you following? How much are the fruit of the the fruit of the Spirit are you enacting? I'm getting jumbled, but
operating in it.
Yes, thank you. Operating in on a day-to-day basis. Like,
I got you.
It's not just for social justice. It's also how you treat your kid when they're acting up and you just want them to be quiet for a moment. Like, it never stops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like your friend said, it's the thing about good and evil, and
I can't see any of the comments because my my phone is blocking it all.
I am now aware that yes, this isn't just about racism; it's about good versus evil, and I think that's speaking to your point. So I agree. It's a fallen world. If we try to solve the problem honestly in our humanity, we're already gonna fail.
Right.
It's a whole spiritual situation, and I know the enemy, he'll use whatever difference he can between people in order to bring division because the accuser of the brethren, because he's just here to deceive people. And if we get short-sighted on, it's about color or it's about, social class or anything like that, we're already thinking on the wrong level, I suppose. But there is an obvious issue. There's an obvious injustice, an obvious target on the backs of brown and black people. I say brown and black, but I'm talking about African descent, but you don't look black to me, and I don't look black. My hair is darker. Your hair is darker than your skin, and my hair is brown. So, I mean, but thank you for sharing with us today. I'm going to do my closing, and if you have any encouragement at the end, definitely want to hear it. We want to thank everybody for joining us today on Diversity Chat. Please join us on the next episode where we destroy ignorance before it destroys us. And for my guest Shannon and all the insight and wisdom that the Lord's pouring through your life. Did you have anything to end and share with the people?
Yeah, just thank you for listening to me. And I just would ask that everyone just take some time to really listen to understand more than listen to make a point. And I think that as long as you offer someone a platform to speak, then someone else will offer you a platform to speak as well. You just have to respect each other, love each other, and go check out cultivateusnow.org for more information. And let's just embrace love and knowledge.
Yeah. Amen. Good stuff. Well, thank you guys again, and thank you, Shannon. We'll see you guys later. Let's see.
I love you guys.